Alrighty then, Bloodborne was last week, so Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is this week. But Scr00bl0rd, you bellow from inside your empty fucking cranium cavity. Dark Souls 3 came out well before Sekiro. It was 3 whole years, in fact. Why are you doing this to me? Well, if it's really so important to all 10 of you, it's because I don't really have a lot to say about Dark Souls 3. It takes the mechanics of demons, souls, Dark Souls, and Dark Souls 2, and then puts them together with a game world that literally goes back to areas from the first Dark Souls game. People complain that it was almost impossible to play with friends in other Dark Souls games because people are fucking dumb and they just don't understand that's how the game was fucking meant to be played, so they made it possible here. Not only that, but the game feels like its difficulty was artificially inflated because it was supposed to be played with other people. Most of the boss fights involve fighting more than one guy at a time, and the enemy count is just ridiculous. All in all, repeated areas, obnoxious bosses, you choose the fire gem as a starting item, get the katana right next to the hub area, and then proceed to absolutely destroy the game. It's not all bad, and there's some neat parts like the Deacons of the Deep Cathedral, but I just don't have much to say about it, so I'm gonna move on to the one I actually want to talk about. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice was Hidetaka Miyazaki's next pursuit after bringing the Dark Souls series to its middling end, and saying that Sekiro is a departure is an understatement. There's no character creation, you use one main weapon the whole game, and the beginning areas are extremely linear. Sekiro is a game that's looking to tell a story more than create a world for the player to goof around in like the Souls games, and a fun story it is. You play as Wolf, a shinobi who was adopted into a clan as a young orphan by another shinobi who goes by the name of Owl. 20 years on, you're in charge of being the bodyguard to the child heir of your clan when a bunch of thugs break into the estate, kill everyone, and kidnap the young boy. Refusing to give up to being the Leon to a young boy, Ashley, you break out of the cell and attempt to rescue the child, which goes awry when Genichiro, the son of the current leader of the land in which you reside, cuts off your arm and takes the boy. Fortunately for you, the reason Genichiro wanted the boy is because he holds the secret to immortality, which he blessed you with when the estate was raided, so you wake up in the shack of a former shinobi who now sculpts and nursed you back to health. Unfortunately, your left arm was severed in the battle with Genichiro. Fortunately, however, the sculptor made you a wicked cool prosthetic arm that he can load different weapons with, like an axe, a spear, a fan, a firework launcher, as well as many others. So armed with your sword, your prosthetic arm, and your ability to hide in waist-high grass, you set off to save the boy from Genichiro and the Ashina clan. As well as all those wonderful advantages I just mentioned, you also have the ability, as the title says, to die twice. What this boils down to mechanically is when the game's unreasonable difficulty eventually gets you, you have a few moments where you can choose to resurrect at half health and either continue fighting or use your grappling hook to fuck off and find a shrine to rest at. Eventually, you can unlock the ability to resurrect more than once, and if you live long enough after a resurrection, sometimes up to 3 or 4. This may sound like it makes the player overpowered, but that's not anywhere near the case. If anything, this is the game attempting to give you a fighting chance at actually working your way through this fucking thing. Sekiro is unbelievably balls to the wall hard. I've beaten a lot of games in my life. The Souls games, Zelda 2, fucking Street Fighter 2010 The Final Fight. I've beaten Doom 3 on Nightmare difficulty with nothing but the Soul Cube and the shotgun, but after 6 attempts, I still haven't beaten Sekiro. I get well into the second half of the game, get to the fucking ape, and quit. Half a dozen fucking attempts just to get to one boss that destroys me over and over again. It's not like I quit after a few attempts either. I swear on my ability to get it up that I fought in this ape over 100 fucking times to no avail. Even if I did beat the goddamn ape, I just get to work my way towards having to kill 2 of them at the same fucking time. Jesus Christ. I hope this is what you all wanted, you FromSoft junkies with your love for taking it up the ass in your spare time. Not to sound homophobic or archaic or anything with that last statement, or the following one for that matter, but this game is fucking gay. And not the good kind of gay, like Neil Patrick Harris gay, the bad kind of gay, like Jeffrey Dahmer gay. So if this game makes me feel the equivalent to my butthole at 3 in the morning after I did that blazing challenge of Buffalo Wild Wings, why have I given it so many attempts? Well, hopefully more eloquently put, it's beautiful in every aspect. The world is pornography for the eyeballs. The level design and difficulty progression are both perfectly paced, and the mechanics are so fine-tuned that playing Sekiro just feels like the video game equivalent to a nice figure skating routine. I'd say it's the only game I've ever played that comes close to feeling as good to control as Nier Automata does. Using your grappling hook to fly over a building, then landing and crouching at the same time in a patch of grass just to slowly sneak up on an enemy and jam your sword in his throat all in one swift motion. Mwah. The amount of kinesthetic pleasure this game provides is basically untouchable, and once you get really used to it, it provides the true sense of being a shinobi. Every time I restart this game to give it another attempt, I come back stronger and more versed in how to handle the world and its challenges. The biggest of which I'd say is actually leveling up Wolf. See, in the Souls games, you could go out and farm enemies to level up if you were stuck somewhere and you needed to have more health or stamina or do more damage to fight a boss. In Sekiro, however, the only way to level up your HP is to kill bosses. That's it. Not only one at a time even. Every minor boss, which are usually about a 10-second walk in any direction from one another drops prayer bees, which you need 4 of in total to level up your HP. This is the biggest mechanical change in my opinion. If you're stuck at a boss, you need to kick their ass just to gain the helpful upgrade you would need to beat them. Basically, they sat down and asked themselves, how do we really drive home get good? And someone looked up from the fucking table and said, make them have to beat bosses in order to beat bosses. Because fuck them. And I imagine that they were immediately given a raise. When I say that there are bosses all within close proximity to each other, that's a fucking understatement. There are bosses placed everywhere within the game world. You can't even jump in a fucking pond to escape enemies without finding some headless boss monster in there that kills you just by looking at you. This is unfortunately essential since it's the only way to get stronger. You can level up your attack power, but you do this by killing the major bosses the storyline has to offer. So minor bosses for health, major ones for attack. Awesome. As irritating as it can be when you inevitably get stuck on something difficult, it does really make it feel that much better when you eventually work your way through a challenge. This game is so good it has you coming back to it again and again, no matter how bad it drunkenly knocks you from room to room like an abused spouse. Domestic abuse humor, that's classy. That was actually the last line I wrote yesterday before I stepped away from the script for the night, and I'm kind of bummed out actually now that I'm looking at it this morning. If it helps, I don't support domestic violence. Even if she hits you first, fellas, sorry to say. As a feminist, I personally believe strongly in equal rights and lefts, but you should never engage back. Just pack your shit and move on, you deserve better. Anyway, regardless of the fact that there's bosses everywhere, they're actually all really engaging and mostly memorable. From the weird monsters of Japanese folklore to other shinobis that you find hidden around other corners and in pits, every one requires focus and attention. While they are difficult, there's a good chunk of bosses that have a weakness. They usually come in the form of something you can equip to your shinobi prosthetic. For instance, the first major boss comes at you on a horse, and animals get easily spooked by the firecracker tool. So if you're able to find the merchant that sells it, you'll have something that really goes a long way in helping defeat the boss. The firecracker also startles the ape, but obviously hasn't done me any fucking good. As far as the linearity of the game, it's really not all that bad. I went on and on in my Dark Souls review about how I was huge into the open world design and the exploration aspect, so you'd think I'd look down on Sekiro for being more linear, but actually I don't. Pretty early on, you gain the ability to sit at a statue and go into a memory of when your clan's estate was burned down and the heir was captured. This gives you another area to go and collect things you're gonna need, and while there are just 2 different linear paths, the variety is nice. It isn't too long into the game before multiple branching paths open up, but they're typically locked behind a boss enemy. This is done, I assume, to deter low-level players from getting into places like the underground dungeon and eventually the Ashina depths, as well as the godforsaken Mount Congo temple. As well as streamlining the level design, they streamline the RPG elements as well, if you can even call them that anymore. Basically, you can choose between which style of attacks you'd like to specialize in. There's Shinobi, Ashina, Temple, Mushin, and prosthetic arts. You get Shinobi and prosthetic arts from the sculptor after you gain your first skill point and unlock enough different prosthetics respectively. The other ones you gain after finding scrolls that explain the different arts which are hidden around the map. Essentially, the system works like this. Every time you kill an enemy, they drop money. If you get enough money without dying, you gain a skill point. Once you have a skill point, you can't lose it. However, when you die, your XP bar that's been building up to your next skill point is halved. So while you get to keep what you earn, earning them is definitely a challenge. Once you build up enough skill points, you can unlock different abilities based on which arts you've unlocked. The most useful one early on, in my opinion, is the Mikiri counter. It grants you the ability to step down on the spears of certain enemies when they come at you with a charge attack, and when you do, it breaks their posture and grants you the ability to do a death kill. Oh shit, I almost forgot to mention. The game has a posture system, kind of like the Souls games did, but it works a little bit differently. You, as well as the enemies, have a posture bar, and when it fills up, it stuns the enemy and opens them up for a death blow. These are instant kills for most basic enemies, and most boss enemies require you to do 2 or more death blows to get it done. You can also get death blows by waiting in a high place and jumping onto an enemy if they haven't noticed you. It feels pretty badass. Like the Predator or something, just hanging out in a tree watching one of them corrupted monks come down the staircase until BAM! You pounce on them before they even know what hit them. Even though I've always gotten stuck while playing Sekiro, I've watched the rest of the game online. I almost wish I didn't though, because if you go for the true ending, there's this really awesome boss fight in another realm that takes place on a mirrored pond where you go bouncing from tree to tree, dodging lightning and fighting this demigod. Oh, it's aesthetically just one of the coolest bosses in a FromSoft game. And if you haven't seen or played this thing, I recommend not ruining it for yourself. You know, I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to find something negative to talk about, but it's really difficult. Even for a game that's beyond my skill level, I absolutely love it, and I've put hundreds of hours into it. Last week when I was talking about Bloodborne, I mentioned how much I loved the streamlining the game pulls off and how it felt like an evolution of the mechanical aspects of Dark Souls. Sekiro's the same way, except it's an even more streamlined version of the streamlining that Bloodborne did. I suppose it was a little weird to see the character progression in a FromSoft game being boiled down to skill trees, but the rest of the game is designed around it, so it works really well. While Bloodborne is still my favorite because I'm a sucker for that horror shit, Sekiro is definitely up there. Gorgeous game with fluid movement and combat, a challenge for any player of any skill level with a wonderful feudal Japan twist, hands down one of the most unique games ever made, and you'll be hard-pressed to find something on the same level. And before you mention Ghost of Tsushima, I'd like to remind you that not only did Sekiro come out first, but it has enough of a pedigree behind it that it didn't have to hack off Assassin's Creed in order to sell enough units to keep the team in business.
Later, Nick!